Welcome back to another episode of Detroit 360, your personal guide to all things Detroit. I'm your host, Sheila Grant. Hey guys, I am a huge fan of traveling. When I come to the airport, I think that I'm on my way out for an exciting adventure, perhaps grab a great bite and maybe do a little shopping. But here at Detroit City Airport, there's more options available. They've had their first annual drag racing. And so this next story is going to show you so much more that City Airport has to offer. Stay tuned.
We're on the east side of Detroit, Detroit City Airport, for the first inaugural Motor City Showdown. And I might add, not underground, but above ground and legal drag racing right here in the city of Detroit. This is a great day for the city, and I believe this is a precursor of a permanent solution here in the city of Detroit.
Well, I started drag racing back in like, with my brothers and them back like in the 70s and the 80s. Then we used to always go to Detroit Dragway and Milan, but that seemed like after they closed Detroit Dragway, it wasn't a place for nobody to really race, and people was getting killed out here doing these street races and things. So after that, it was like people was just trying to find a safe place to race. So this would be a good thing if we can really, get a safe place for us to race in Detroit, in the city of Detroit.
Oh, whoa, looks like we lost the hood. Disco Dean might have pulled it off. Who's my winner? Oh, it's the Flying Circus Machine. Flying Circus Machine takes the way.
Yeah, Big Papa's me and my nephew car, and that's what we do for a living. That's what we do. This is a 67 Camaro, small block, twin turbo, 2-speed car. Well, it's dangerous. It will kill you. It's not for the street. It's for to be at the track. Our cars are too fast for that. We in the second round. We're going to the third round, and hopefully we can win this whole event. Then on the 30th, we're going to US 131 for the event, and hopefully we can do good there.
Once again, Big Tire Cars, Motor City Showdown 2017. Special thanks
to the City of Detroit, the City Airport for letting us use our service, DPD, the Detroit Fire Department. Everybody's come out and made this happen. Dodge and the SRT team, Diamond Pistons, NGK Spark Plugs, Energy, Callie's Crankshaft. We got everybody come on board, make this happen, make this a dream come true. Drag racing back in the city limits once again, 2017 Motor City Showdown. Well, everybody, it's all about the engineering. The drivers just got to hold on, get it down the track, pull the gears at the right moment. Big block nitrous assisted machine for Danny G here on tower side. That's Diamond Hugo. Big Papa in the LSX twin turbo machine in far lane. Our starter Brian Chucky Davis, Street Outlaw Man. Lining them up, there they go. Diamond gets a jump. Danny G, let it go. That's Diamond Hugo for the win. The twin turbo for the win all day long.
I think that was a good event for the city. I think it worked out real good. No drama, no riffraff. Couple of accidents, but it kind of shows the safety of being on a safe environment versus the street. We got a good team. My nephew, Ponde's Performance, our driver, Hugo Diamond. It's a team. It's like a little family support thing that we had together, and everything works like it's supposed to. Come here, nephew. The final, it was a good race. We raced a gentleman called Doc James. He got a black Chevelle, big block car, and he did well. He left on us 2 cars out the hole, and it looked like he had the race, but our car picked him up in the top end and beat him by 2 cars, and we won the Big Tire Championship of Detroit. To my left right here, this is my nephew Braylon. Would none of this be possible without him. He's a real big support, and this gentleman to my right here, Ponde, he's a real good friend of the family, rooted guy, family-orientated person, all about business, and would none of this be possible without him and team. And one more person, he's not here right now, his name is Diamond Hugo. He's a driver, he's a real good guy. Would none of this be possible with all of these guys' support.
We encourage the sport, we love the sport, but we encourage the younger generation to do it the right way. Stay off the streets, keep people safe, and that's why I think Brian did a wonderful job of organizing the whole event to keep everybody off the streets from doing it, and it was still fun. It was still a good atmosphere. There was, safety crew on board there. The Detroit Police Department did a great job of, just keeping an eye on everybody. And it just turned out to be a very, very fun and well-organized event.
Hey guys, I'm down here at WGPR in their studios located downtown Detroit on East Jefferson. In the back of their studio, they have a museum that chronicles African Americans in media here in Detroit. I am so excited to take a look because obviously being in the media, it's cool to know about the history of the business that I'm in. Just like the city of Detroit, WGPR has many firsts in its history. WGPR was the very first Detroit station to broadcast 24 hours a day. And this wall here gives you a flashback of some of the shows that made up its original programming. Oh, this is really cool. It's their career springboard, and it looks like it shows people who got their start here at WGPR before they went off to other spots in the industry. And I see a familiar face as I look a little closer. Tiffany Crawford is one of our own. She now works for the city of Detroit. How cool is that? You guys, there's really so many cool things to see here at the museum, but I don't have enough time to share them with you all. So I encourage you to come down. They're open every Friday from 10 to 3, and the best part is the admission is free. It doesn't cost you anything to come in. You can learn a little bit more about African Americans and their role in media here in Detroit. Now, I'm going to go take a look around the museum, and I want you to tune in on this next Detroit Classic that covers WJZZ.
For the lonely today.
Day would never end.
For the confused and frustrated today.
Without a song.
Dr. Haley Bell, who began practicing dentistry in Hamtramck in 1923, has had successful careers in various other fields, the latest of which is operation of radio stations WCHB-AM and ACHD-FM. He founded them in 1955, the first U.S. radio stations to be owned by Negroes. Dr. Bell and his family, Dr. Bell's sons-in-law, Drs. Wendell Cox and C. Robert Bass, both dentists, have worked closely with Dr. Bell in establishing the stations as a major force in the Negro community.
The company was started back in 1956 by my grandfather, Dr. Haley Bell. WCHB stood for Wendell Cox, Haley Bell, that was the call letters. And WCHD was the FM sister of WCHB back then, which was the dominant station. My grandfather, Dr. Haley Bell, who's a dentist by trade, my uncle, Dr. Wendell Cox, who's a dentist, and my father, Dr. Robert Bass, were dentists. Ironically, they were all dentists in Hamtramck. And now we're talking about 1948, soon after the war, 51, etc., long before integration. And the three of them were successful dentists, and they decided, well, my uncle came up with the concept that, you know, maybe we should try to be entrepreneurial in our growth and try areas that most black African Americans weren't privy to. So my grandfather came up with the concept, why not get involved in the media?
Dr. Bell wrote a letter to the Federal Communications Commission asking for a grant to start the station. It was the first grant given an individual to build a black radio station in the country. The rest is history. The station became an instant success.
Now, media is a wide range. Television was in its infancy. Print was already kind of established, because you had a black paper, the Chronicle in Detroit, but there were no black radio stations. So my grandfather, Dr. Bell, petitioned the FCC for a license, and to his surprise, he was granted a license. When he was granted a license, he told my father, Dr. Bass, and my uncle, Dr. Cox, he said, listen, I want you guys to continue working in the dental office, pool your dollars together, because it's going to take X number of dollars to start a radio station. And after about a 3-year struggle from 1953 to 1956, where they had to get a building permit, they had to get the necessary materials actually to construct the radio station, you had to get engineers to put the tower sites up, etc. You got a piece of land, which was in Inkster. They would not give us a license for the city of Detroit. We had a 1,000-watt directional signal that came on at 6 a.m. in the morning and went off at sundown. So we weren't even a 24-hour radio station, but we were still the first operated, owned, and operated radio station by black people in the United States. This was 1956.
The new outlet has the call letters WCHB, its owner's initials. and is situated in the populous Detroit suburb of Inkster. Dr. Bell helped to construct the handsome gray building which houses its studios. The 500-watt station, manned by a staff of 23 experienced employees, whom Dr. Bell admittedly lured away from their jobs by offering more lucrative wages. The station is on the air daily from 6 a.m. until 5:30 p.m. and features programs of special interest to Michigan's Negro population. Nearly every black person in the Detroit area with radio experience first worked at WCHB or WCHD. Bill Matney received his first broadcasting experience from WCHB, and the list includes Jerry Blocker and Bob Bennett, Don Haney and Ed Love, Gene Elsey, Martha Jean the Queen, Trudy Haynes, Detroit's first black TV weather girl, O. Phil Dukes, former right-hand man to Vice President Hubert Humphrey, and many others. Listening to the rock and roll played on WCHB has become a family tradition in most of Detroit's black homes, and in times of trouble, such as the 1967 riot, they listened to WCHB 24 hours a day. Detroit was so full of musical talent that you could snatch almost any black teenager off the street, put him on stage, and he could perform. The major outlet for this talent was WCHB, which plays records for black artists who would never be heard otherwise. By the time Berry Gordy became the owner of Motown, WCHB had long ago recognized his recording efforts and had consistently played his records on its station.
We weren't even a 24-hour radio station, but we were still the first operated, owned, and operated radio station by black people in the United States. This was 1956. The response was incredible. People in the Detroit market were extremely loyal to us. At that time, Gordy was just starting Motown. They needed an outlet to play their music. They could not get their music played on white-owned stations. Back then, they were the CKLWs, the WXYZs, WKNRs. Those are the big AM white stations. They wouldn't play black music in those days. So CHB was an outlet that Berry Gordy could personally come to the station with a stack of 45s and pitch my grandfather and other members of my family to play his product, which was a natural tie-in for what we were programming back then anyway.
WCHB, Detroitland's Disco Connection.
WCHB Radio 1440. Here during the riots, played a big part, had all the major, I would say, all of the major black air personalities in the country were here at CHB at some point in time.
For the next 10 years, WCHB continued its pioneering role, broadcasting music selected by blacks. It was then, in 1966, that Haley Bell decided to broaden his horizons and built WJZZ FM. Dr. Haley Bell was a true revolutionary in his zeal to bring about constructive social change and to build new structures for handling these changes. His widow, Mrs. Mary Bell, recognized and loved the vitality of his spirit. She succeeded him as president of the Bell Broadcasting Company. It is that legacy that has motivated Mrs. Bell to continue on with some of the programs her late husband wanted to see succeed in his lifetime, or perpetuated by his wife, children, and grandchildren.
My grandmother, Mary Bell, became president of the station in '74 when my grandfather passed away. So she was the president until we sold the radio station in 1998. So you had a black woman who was the president of a major media corporation in the 70s and 80s and 90s, long before it was trendy. And she was like a pioneer in her own, you know, in her own regard.
And I know,
as my grandfather passed away, she took over, and that's when the growth years were greater. That's when we switched the format, even though in the very beginning, which was just as difficult, when you had nothing to work with, my grandfather started it, the pioneer years, collectively with those too. That was the growth spurt that we experienced under both administrations.
Mary L. Bell. As president and chairwoman of the board of the Bell Broadcasting Company in Detroit, the Tennessee native not only made history herself in 1973 when she took the helm of the company, but is also an integral part of two other precedents. Flagship AM blues and gospel station WCHB is the first radio station to be constructed by blacks, and FM station WJZZ, based in Detroit, is the first operation in that city to broadcast jazz 24 hours a day.
But our FM station, CHG, we had a license, but we didn't really know what to program. So we figured, like, well, why not do jazz? We knew black people listened to jazz when they went home, but what were they listening to in their cars going to work? So that we figured we would corner the market, have everything you wanted to listen to. Little did we know jazz would explode to become the major listening force that it was, and someday carry WCHB. I mean, it would be the station that made more money than CHB. But that's also because it was an FM stations, and FM stations were just starting to emerge back in the 70s, where the AM stations were losing market dominance, and FM stations were springing up because of the fidelity involved and the superior listening.
WJZZ, this is Doc in Detroit, 626 rise and shine time, 26 degrees bouncing off your body. That's our temperature outside. Bundle up, gonna be dry, but a little chilly. This is the sound of Sade. It's called Bulletproof Soul. Hits with a bang from the CD Love Deluxe. On the Motor City's #1 adult music station with Doc in the morning. Move the music till 10 o'clock. How you doing? This is Jazz 106 FM, WJZZ.
I just remember on WJZZ always hearing Always There by Ronnie Laws. That song was always there. And then later in life, I learned who he was and what the song was called. Some of these songs become a part of your memory, and then, you know, later on you can discover what it is, hearing it as a child, you know, but it helps you form your impressions of what jazz is and what it can be. You know, there are many different possibilities within jazz.
Who didn't like Martha Jean Steinberg, the Queen? Yeah. And Larry Doc Elliott and Rosetta Hines. I talked to Rosetta Hines. She said, "What's your name?" I said, "Shantanique." She said, "Oh, that's such a pretty name. It rolls off the tongue."
WJZZ Jazz 106 at 2:20. George Michael, Jesus to a Child. Yes, Joe McBride has the new CD out entitled Keys to Your Heart. We heard After Sunset, featuring Grover Washington Jr. Brian Culberson, his hot new one, Modern Life, Midnight Sun. Windows of My Soul, that's the new one for Chris Cabozzi. Go West, Young Man. Upcoming, J.B. Horns. Jeff Lorber, and a memory pleaser from Pat Metheny. Right here for you after these words of interest at WJZZ Jazz 106.
I love Donald Byrd's music, you know, and his contribution to modern jazz, you know. So I think in the 70s, his stuff was really nice. It was always nice, you know, nice throughout the 60s too, when he was with Blue Note Records. But I like his stuff in the 70s with the Mizell Brothers a lot. I really enjoy hearing all that stuff that he did at that time. Ronnie Laws I like a lot. Travis Biggs is another favorite from back then that they would play. Herbie Hancock. I don't know, there's that. Quincy Jones.
My husband met Martha Jean McQueen on the elevator. And she was like, "You such a nice man, I'm gonna come and see you." And she came by and seen him.
What made me curious was wondering, well, what these songs are made from samples. Like, what are these old records that have these great sounds? Because it was the great old sounds I was hearing that I found that really compelling. Like this R&B and jazz that a lot of the records were made from made me investigate it more thoroughly and say, who is Bob James? Because everybody, Run DMC used a Bob James record really early on and made that, record a part of everybody's consciousness as a kid. And so I think it's a good thing. A lot of the artists might not have liked sampling, especially if they weren't being paid, but it did turn a younger generation of listeners onto their music when it could have potentially been forgotten. Like trends, come and go in jazz, and like they're not going to play the same stuff on the radio they played back in the 70s. So Bob James might have been forgotten if, and that was something that was definitely played on WJZZ as well.
You think of Detroit, you think of Motown. You think of Detroit, you think of Bell Broadcasting. And we used that to our advantage near the end before we sold to Radio 1, which is the dominant radio broadcast in the United States now. But we used that legacy pitch to get advertising dollars that were not earmarked for stations like ours, because they knew they had to buy our audience because they were loyal. You had people who literally grew up listening to CHB and JZZ as kids, and they became adults, and then they exposed it to their children.
Jazz 106, WJZZ, Michael Ross and Chase of a Dream. 11:42. I'm on my way to Chase Stewart. Yes, honey, put that head on the pillow and I'm dreaming. Mesa gave us Raindrops, and Say You Will came from Kim Penso at 11:43. Venice is my name, and my time is done for you on this Thursday night. Stay tuned for Randy Miles. She's going to carry you through into a brand new Friday with lots of great jazz on the way with Tom Grant, some Norman Brown and Paul Taylor, and oh yeah, just some of your favorites. Make sure you check her out this evening, and I'll check back with you tomorrow, 7 o'clock, right here at Jazz 106 WJZZ.
So, like you get somebody, in 1950 who listened to THB, so they become 25 years old, they have children, they listen to JZZ, and it becomes like a best-kept secret in Detroit, but it's a Detroit secret. Very similar to how the Motown story exploded, but that type of loyalty, and me being in marketing and advertising, it was incredible because I knew we had listeners who were loyal to the station. It's just because we were black-owned and operated. We were from Detroit. I'd say right now that Radio 1, who bought our company in 1998, who are probably the most dominant media, black-owned and operated people, with TV One, and there are multiple radio stations around the country. They're very good broadcasters, and I was very happy that we were able to sell to somebody, a black person, who was able to continue our legacy, and that's why they maintained the call letters WCHB.
The history of these stations is one part of the life of a black man who never stopped dreaming of economically stable and healthy black communities in Detroit.
Well, that's it for this episode of Detroit 360. I'm your host, Sheila Grant. Thanks for watching.